Testing, testing. Good evening and welcome to our part's live stream on election night 2025. And what an interesting day we've had at the polls this year. I wonder how many of you have actually been able to follow the news throughout the day. There have been a number of alleged irregularities. Some polling districts experienced very long lines, others not so long. There was some interesting initial data coming out from post poll touch points. And I have been listening to TTT's live coverage of their panel. And there were some interesting points made already by the panelists, such as in the lead up to the campaign, many people expected a greater depth when it came to policy provisions and explaining to the public the how question, which is what we always ask at our part. The whats are easy. We want to do X, Y, and Z, but how are you going to afford it, plan it, implement it, monitor it? How? So the other point made was that there is a sense that there was a shift in the last few weeks in the UNC's direction. And of course, we all are waiting to see if that premonition or that projection holds. I will say that I will endorse that perception because I have been looking at a number of metrics and various media platforms. And based on some initial analysis as well as utilization of AI, there definitely seemed to have been more interest placed in the UNC's campaign. While we allow some more of the results to come in over the next 2 hours, I want to make the point that I took the time to compare the speeches of the two leaders on Saturday evening. And it's interesting that in both speeches, they basically focused on some of the same areas: youth, the elderly, pensions, labor. So it was obvious that whatever data points these parties were using to inform their messaging were consistent across the board. Something they both found told them that they needed to look at these issues. Now, it was interesting because the opposition leaders' theme in relation to the PNM was basically that the PNM represents the 1% in the population and that the party was being governed and had been overtaken by the elites, and there was a lot of nepotism and greed. While the Prime Minister's criticism of the UNC harkened back to this allegation that the UNC is completely corrupt. Now, on that note, I'll pause for a minute. Anarian is joining us. Anarian, are
Hi,
you
hi, how
hearing
are you?
me?
I am. Can you hear me? Hello?
So, Anarian, as soon as you can, just jump in. I was making the point that the Prime Minister's focus or main criticism of the UNC harkened back to the fact that, as far as he's concerned, the UNC almost broke the country and had squandered and wasted money. So 10 years later, we were hearing the same main criticisms across the aisle. However, to be fair, the Prime Minister was able to outline more of their shopping cart list than the opposition leader did. Whether that landed or not is a different story, because in a mass speech, a mass market speech such as a last rally presentation, I am not quite convinced that what you want to do at that point is necessarily list your entire manifesto of promises. You really need to zone in and capture the imagination of the listening public and give your final sales pitch to your vision for the country. So the opposition leader, to my mind, did a better job at engaging the audience and referencing just enough promises to create a holistic vision of where the UNC wanted to take Trinidad and Tobago. As a matter of fact, she spoke about the fact that the UNC's campaign was positive, it was policy driven, was people centered. Stuart Young also shared that the PNM is putting citizens at center, but he did spend a lot more time focusing on the opposition than the opposition spent on the PNM. And Mrs. Prasad Bisessa spoke about a country where everyone finds an equal place, while the PNM offers equal opportunity, inclusion, and collaboration. So that's why I'm saying, in many regards, they were actually speaking to some of the same data points. Anarian, are you with us now?
I am. Can you hear me?
Ah, yes. I think we're hearing you now. Are you coming on video?
I am driving home as I'm joining you, and I'll join from my laptop as I reach.
Yes, we can hear you. So once you're safe, as you normally drive, we look forward to you joining me. But did you hear some of what I said in relation to the last two speeches on Saturday evening
I heard what you were talking about the president just now, and
about about the
how she was
opposition leader?
yes, correct. And I was listening to CNT3 a short while ago, and they outgoing MD from Mayaro on the street. And he was saying up until 4 o'clock, he was only the 200 person to come out and vote. That the voting process was slow across in Mayaro.
Well, yes, I made that point very early in this stream that it was a very interesting day because you got reports that certain polling stations l- were presenting lines and then others were dead. So I like you, I can't wait to get the actual data in our hands so that we can do that kind of comparison. But when you went, you got through pretty quickly. I got through in 5 minutes.
I stood for about 10 minutes, but that is because the person who was in the booth took a while to make their choice. They were contemplating all the options before them
Interesting.
in, in that booth because there was only one person in front of me in the line.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, I was actually number 69 in my district, in my polling district. And I went there at 9:30 a.m.
So I presented myself perhaps around noon, just after noon, and
Right.
I was 172. I actually was a little reluctant to go at that time because I believed as it was its lunch, more people would have been there. But even when I was leaving, there were only 3 or 4 people entering. So I'm not quite sure what happened for the rest of the day in that district, but I did see some photographs of long lines, and I saw reports from different camps that they were actually recognizing a large voter turnout. So I don't know if that is part of their rhetoric to perhaps, well, the data is going to be the proof at the end of the day, but I don't know if that was just them trying to encourage the rest of the people to come out, because in other words, everybody's voting, so you don't want to miss out. I'm pretty sure that might have been part of it.
But yeah, I mean, I and all did some posting on social media and some polling as well amongst my friends and some young people groups that I am in. And up until like lunchtime, 90% of persons didn't indicate that they went and voted.
Well, I spoke to a number of my colleagues, some our age, a few younger, and I must report that unfortunately many of them said they weren't voting. And
And they
this
were
is,
not voting.
yes, and this is what reinforces the need for our part to continue our engagement, because people out there believe that that persons are engaged in a process. But I'm waiting to see the data, because the data will finally tell us if this year more people decided that they wanted to exercise their franchise. I made sure and exercised mine because I do believe ethically, if you exercise your franchise, you have a greater right to continue to be part of the process. Because if you take yourself out, Anarian, I don't know how you feel about this, but if you take yourself out from the opportunity to have a say, then in a way you are accepting that the rest of us will make the decision for you. So therefore, the rest of us have the right to comment, even though you're a citizen as well. I don't know what you feel about that. Maybe I'm taking a very harsh position. Anarian?
Sorry, I just got home, so I was kind of switching from data to
Yes,
Wi-Fi.
we're hearing you now.
Yeah, the last thing I heard you say actually was that persons exercising their franchise give, if they don't, they give others the opportunity to represent them. And that is so true because if you don't make a decision to actively change those who govern you, you had to stay there and take whatever you get. And remember, we did our part organization did some myths versus facts for young voters. And that was actually one of the points that they made. You're muted, Rudolph.
Been talking about this, as you rightly said, and it was an important component of our RepTT campaign, which I think we're going to have to just continue because the local government elections will appear at some point. And we have to build on the momentum, if at all there was some. Again, the data is going to bear us out. I'm listening to TTT's live stream, and they're actually interviewing Michaela Pandey at their party headquarters. And in talking to you, the bit I'm picking up at the same time is that she's saying things don't always go the way that you expect. You have to enjoy what you do, you have to believe in what you do. So I think she's kind of making a preemptive case as to whatever outcome she's expecting. Let me just take in a little bit more so that I can share with our audience. 1 minute. So she's making the point, and Arian, they asked her that what she would say to the nation, given the perception that there was an outpouring of affection and interest in the party. And her answer basically is that she just wants to express her appreciation regardless of the outcome because of the whole experience that she had. So here you have the leader of one of the newest parties and a household name, I would like to think. Uh, at her headquarters, I'm not seeing a large turnout just yet behind her, but I am getting an initial feeling from what she's saying that she's tempering the the outcome that maybe she has in her mind already. Because we know from our experience in politics that you on the day by 6 o'clock you sort of have a sense of where things are going to go.
Most definitely. And interestingly enough, earlier today, when she and her mom did visit the Esperance area to vote, they had asked, it brought her to tears actually because of the remembrance of her father, who, as we
Oh
know, is
yes, I saw that. Hmm.
an iconic political leader in the country. Well, former iconic political leader in the
Yeah.
country. And our hearts go out to him because he honestly was one of the better ones. I wouldn't lie, at least to me.
Well, I guess people have different criteria that they use to assess a prime minister. I would tell you that one of my main criterion, the main criterion that I use is the ability for a prime minister to unite a nation behind a vision. And I remember when Mr. Pandey first became prime minister, I was still a teenager at the time. I felt a sense that similar to Robinson, what I read about Robinson, because I was a toddler, I guess, in those days when he won, that he was able at for a moment in time to excite the population, just as Kamla Prasad Bisesa did in 2010. I I believe that Patrick Manning tried to attract buy-in from the population, diverse buy-in from the population for the projects and the vision that he had. However, the fact that he became so unpopular and lost the election in 2010, as did Pandey's government coming out of the fiasco with the airport, etc. So I don't think that Manning was as successful, but it seems that we have this trajectory in our politics where leaders arise, they attract interest, they have a moment or two in the sun, but then something happens along the way and they quickly descend and lose popularity. And that is what I saw over the last 10 years as well, Anarian. I, I don't know if you see it the same way.
Yes, I do. I've seen the same thing happen. And it always surprises me that no matter what, hmm, how just I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it.
Hmm.
I don't know if they get caught up in the power that their human touch when they enter the changes. I think that's the best way I can phrase it.
Well, th- there are criticisms leveled at all of them that somewhere along the way they do indeed lose connection with the population. Now, that could be a function of the, I'm not making excuses. I'm trying to sort of disaggregate and unpack why that would happen. It could be a function of the role of prime minister because thinking about being prime minister and actually having to fulfill the role would be two different things, right? And when you get there and you realize that there are so many other issues or there are roadblocks to your vision, you may adopt an approach that is then seen as either big stick or unpopular or dictatorial, etc., because you're trying to push this agenda forward. And you it's not as easy as you thought it was. Now, having said that, the Prime Minister and the government have at their disposal the full arms and powers of the state, and they should be able to use the communications mechanisms to engage the population more effectively and keep them included in the process. And maybe by doing that, they will mitigate that type of fallout.
Right. And I don't know how to respond to that. Because, like you said, thinking about it and being in it is two different things. And I've always said to myself that if I do reach that level of power or I have that control, I wouldn't change, but I don't know what that would be like. But in the same breath, I can say that hundreds of thousands has passed through my hand, yet I didn't steal anything.
Right.
And I've managed persons, I've dealt with international and local and regional organizations and whatnot. And I don't think it changed me. But then being the ruler of a country is completely different than managing some organizations.
Well, the other thing to bear in mind is that if you don't have a team of people that is rowing, all of them are rowing in the same direction, you then start to have some of this fragmentation and splintering, and the core vision gets messy. And then you have scandals, you have noise, you have the opposition, of course, doing its best to criticize you, other detractors, agents of the private sector that have an agenda. So it's winning is one thing, governing is a completely different thing. And in the TTT live stream earlier as well, they were also discussing the fact that the politicians don't share the details of the policies widely enough. They were calling for the same things we had called for, which were public debates for the manifestos to be launched earlier so that people can critique them and assess them, for discussions to be held in the constituencies. So we have to continue to advocate and lobby for these things moving forward.
100% agreed. And it's good to know that our ideas and what we were lobbying for is not lost in the public, that it's something that they actually want.
Yes.
So it's not just two mad scientists at work here, but maybe we can be a voice for the people to identify what they want and reach out to those leaders and those in power to better bring that forward. Because honestly, I think some manifestos will launch just the week before elections. And that in itself is chaotic. You wouldn't have enough time to go through that.
Well, I'm listening to I'm listening to TTP's economist. I'm not catching her name just yet. When I do, I'll share it. She's making the point that there were many ideas in the manifestos, but she's asking, can you really do all of that in 5 years? And I have always, you've heard me say this before, that you need to prioritize areas that have a knock-on effect so that what you do in the short and medium term facilitates what you need to do in the longer term. But again, you need to communicate this effectively to the population because everybody's priorities are different. And some people want things that necessarily should be in the long term to be focused on now. But you can't do that, especially with limited resources. So the assessment tools, the manifesto trackers that we are developing, those are going to be critical to ensure some kind of accountability measures for the new government, whichever takes office.
Sorry there, Rudolph. I missed most of that because I got a call from the Patriotic Front that I needed to take.
So we should let people know from now that the plan is tomorrow from 6 a.m. on Freedom 106.5 FM. We'll be hosting a morning after session and we'll be looking at the data sets in detail and discussing the outcomes and next steps with representatives of various parties. Invitations have been sent to all major parties. If there are smaller parties out there who would like to join, feel free to get in touch with us.
At we must do our part. At we must do at our part.org.
Yes. So, what about your initial observations? Have you been able to take in any of the other streams this evening so far?
I was paying attention to CNT3, and interestingly enough, they didn't have anything major going on up until, let's say, about 7:30. Because they carried the normal news and they covered one or two polling stations. They showed different MPs, well, exiting MPs, returning MPs, ministers, and whatnot voting. Um, but no, I started to listen to Rushton, and then I joined into the stream here. And like I was mentioning, Rushton is doing. He's an outgoing MP who I believe is great.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's not me buying for the UNC or anything. I've dealt with Rushton Parry personally, and he
Right.
supports me in a lot of initiatives that I do. And he's just a downright humble person to my in my perception and to my understanding, and that's why I love listening to him. But another big thing that occurred over the weekend, I don't know if you mentioned it on stream or not,
Hmm.
is that another person I still respect her, is that she switched from the UNC to the PNM. That is the
Yes.
outgoing MP from
Yes.
Sabaki Talparo. And
Yes.
there's a lot of controversy about her on social media for the past 2 days.
Hmm.
And I must say, I don't agree with it. I'll tell you why.
Yes. Explain.
So, a lot of people say because she didn't get back her seat, she's a rat, and these different things, they calling her
Oh.
Miss Splinter. So, if you
Oh
get that
no.
reference from Ninja Turtles,
Wow.
you know. So, and they're saying that she's very, a lot of negative things. That being said, I am going to say that not the fact that she moved, but the fact that the PNM picked her up as one
Right.
of the strongest rivals in Parliament because Anita Haynes is one of the strongest debaters there is in Parliament. And
Yes,
that
she
is
was. She
without
definitely
a
proved
doubt
herself. Yes.
correct. And because of that, they absorbed her into the party. That is forward thinking leadership, I believe. Because the fact that they're doing it in such a way that they understand her value and her worth, that she could fall into that role wherever. And she's respected and she's intelligent. Whereas other persons may be disgruntled in the way that she moved.
Hmm.
So
Well, you
I don't know
see,
what your thoughts are on it.
listen, at the end of the day, if you want to ascribe to Trinidad and Tobago being a democratic nation, then quite frankly, anybody has the privilege, the right to shift their political allegiances. So it is in Miss Haynes's purview to wake up in the morning and decide whom she wants to support. And when we criticize persons like that and call them names such as traitor, rat, whatever, what we are really doing is saying that we don't believe in democracy. What we are saying is that we only believe that once you sign up here, you must forever and always support that particular group. And that is not democracy. As a matter of fact, perhaps if more people were able to be as independent as she is. And I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with whomever she's supporting. I'm dealing with the principle of it. I want to be clear. But if more people in the main parties were as independently minded, then maybe the parties would be better run because they would be more open to effectively engaging to ensure that they maintain their membership. But when the members, Anarian, themselves adopt these very rigid loyalist approaches, then it just means that the parties have control over them.
Yes, I agree. And I mean, I don't think Anita is the only one who went across.
Well, you had people like noted attorney Lala, and you had Dinesh Rambali, and you may have had other UNC supporters that are not publicly known equally transition. But it's fair to remind the public that the opposite happened as well. Known PNM persons ended up on UNC platforms, and there were well, if we take it at face value, there were videos circulating showing where people were removing their PNM shirts and adopting a UNC band. So I guess it happens on both sides, but again, the data is going to bear it out.
Yes, it is. And well, we shall see. And we need to get some results in Rudolph because I am excited. I am
Well,
very much excited to see what is going to
I
happen.
saw some initial results at 7:54 from Guardian around Tuna Puna, which of course is a hotbed. By the way, the TTT's live stream is now speaking to Laura Lizama, I believe, and she is saying that they are cautiously optimistic. Again, when I hear a phrase like that, I I have no choice to believe that they are hearing something that is not allowing them to be overly optimistic.
Right.
So
Um, did you know the UNC is live streaming as well?
I'm sure they are.
I am contemplating which stream to look at. Ian Allen Network currently has Dr. Ishu Raghunath
Hmm.
as well, but I think he is live streaming
Now, I
the
was about to tell you, sorry to cut you, that the Tuna Puna results so far.
uh-huh.
Just check your mic for some static there, because I don't want the viewers and listeners to have any discomfort. The Tuna Puna results at 7:54, very preliminary because you're looking at 27,485 registered voters. Roger Alexander was in the lead with just about 80 votes over Esmond Ford. So these results are going to trickle in as the night comes along.
Are you still getting me started?
Yes, unfortunately.
Alright, that's fine.
Miss Lise Lezama, she's speaking about the machinery. She said she believes they put forward excellent candidates and they had very good machinery on the day. She's sharing that the candidates are situated in their main campaign headquarters for now, so they eventually will make it to the main headquarters, the Balizi House. Laura Lezama. What I find is difficult, and maybe next election, our part can prepare something like this. We need, I'm not see, usually the media has someone at the headquarters of various parties and they're looking at the board. So as the tallies come in, you see the boards moving, but I'm not seeing that type of coverage. They're posting different graphics. So the at 8:17 an Aryan in Chaguanas East, Vandana Mohit of the UNC is at 2600 plus over Richie Sukhai with only 985. Again, about 28,000 registered voters. Not a surprise, but you never know. So far, zero votes for PF, NTA, and the independent candidate.
That is in Sharona's East.
Yes,
Okay. Where sorry, where I've now joined back in. Where are you getting the data from?
I'm looking at Facebook posts by CNC3. Ever
Ah,
so
okay.
often, they are posting graphics with updated results, which I find is I mean it helps, but it could become confusing. I thought they would have had a live ticker with the different results. I know we have the technology. Oh, you have to be careful with that, Mike.
Sorry.
Hoover South, Barry Padarat is in the lead with 1150 over Aaron Mohammed of the PNM, who has 211, and Imran Gokul of PF has 61 votes so far. That was at 8:32. TTT has a strategist, Mr. Henry Moore Henry, I believe is his name. He's talking about marketing of campaigns. And he's making the case that an unexpected election allowed the PNM to go through different cycles.
Right. Are you hearing me better now?
Much better. He's saying that the main parties did make an effort to dominate the space, but I gather, of course, the PNM obviously would have had the date. So they have whatever advantage that brings. And that is another issue that we have to clear up in this country. We've been calling for fixed election dates for many years. And I am a proponent for that. I would love to see the incoming Prime Minister tonight tell the nation the date for the next election one time, because it shouldn't matter to you once you're going to perform, right?
Correct, and I fully agree with that. A lot of people have been calling for that, especially young persons. But I don't know why they don't. Are they afraid of not doing it?
Well, it has to
What do
be.
you think?
They have to be perceive that there is some disadvantage that would accrue. Now, again, I think it that that lack of commitment of its election date reinforces again why on an biannual, annual basis, maybe a quarterly basis, we have to assess the government so that regardless of when they call the election, there is some baseline and real time data that anybody could use to decide whether it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, a month. They can use this information to make an informed decision. And that is what we don't have usually. But I know that at our part, we are committed to starting that process from day one.
Right. Another thing that I think parties need to do is identify who are going to be the ministers in the ministry beforehand. Don't wait until parliament is installed and then you announce it. So, for example, if there is someone in the United National Congress
Yeah.
who I believe would make a good minister of national security, that may sway my decision to vote for the UNC. But
Yes.
if I have to wait until I'm going to make my vote based on represent best person to represent me in my constituency.
Well, the other thing is the one of the analysts on TTT is making the point that apart from the timing of the election, the fact that again, he's bringing up the point that you're supposed to give the population adequate time to review what you're offering them, the candidates, the manifestos, the messaging, the vision. And in such
So let me just stop you there
a
quickly.
contracted time, you can't. Yes.
So honestly, Tobago West, Shamfa Cujo currently has 882 votes, while
Okay.
Joel Sampson from the TPP has 953. And this is after 7% of the votes has counted. And Tobago
All right.
West, Thomas is leading there by a landslide with 60% of the votes going towards him already.
And of
So
course, Sham Fukujo is the incumbent.
correct. So it's looking like right now the TPP is leading both Tobago East and Tobago West.
Well, they say early days still.
Right. Komoto Manzanilla, after 1% of the votes, the
Uh-huh.
UNC is in the lead.
1%.
So
Well,
400 and
it's, I mean,
243 versus 42 by the PNM and
it's
0 by the Patriotic Front.
8:45, and these votes are taking their merry time to get inside. So I don't think we will have initial data until maybe 11 o'clock tonight.
Right. So interestingly enough, Couva South, UNC MP Barry Paradat was previously at the Princestown area.
Yes.
And he moved to Couva South and he's leading there as well.
Yes, I saw that. I mentioned that earlier.
Oh, sorry. So CNC3 right now is giving you that update. They're giving you a live update for the all
1 minute.
41.
Let This is an interesting observation, and he reminded me of that. Even though there was no fixed date on Arian, the analyst on TGT is making the good point that somehow the UNC booked the right the right period of ads, because it was clear that they dominated the airwaves and much of the press. And remember, there was a public debate about that, and there was some going back and forth because the PNM wanted to get additional space or other political parties, but the UNC had somehow blocked up much of the oxygen. That
Yeah.
that was an interesting strategic move. I mean, I have to give them credit for that. However, they decided on blocking, whether they just decided they wanted to start an early campaign and blocked up slots in April, heading into like May, June, July, because the election had to happen sometime before or by August, right?
Right, yes. Big, I think we and all were planning for an early elections, but not this early. We were looking at late May, early June was our initial idea of what that election time was going to look like.
But also, the other analyst is making the point that the UNC's campaign began very early. Remember, they were having these community town hall meetings.
Correct, yes.
So it's definitely interesting. But we have to take these factors into consideration when we reverse engineer whatever the outcome is going to be. Because if variables changed and everybody has a change in their outcome from last election, then you can correlate, right?
Correct. So, latest poll results and an update from the opposition leader is that she's claiming victory in Sapara, and the
Well,
results indicate that the PNM has 1,500 votes while she has
uh,
near 10,000.
well, you know, I want to use an analogy for that, but people might think I'm bad talking someone. Let me see if I can find a different. That's sort of like the Inuit saying that there'll be snow tomorrow. So I I congratulate her, but I don't think that we needed that projection this early.
Right, but so you know where I live and how
Yes.
close to Sapara proximity I am. And I want to say something that may seem anti, but it's just from an independent point of view.
Okay.
And it's that regardless of whether the MP for Sapara does work or not,
Mm-hmm.
they win the seat based
Right.
on the racial demographic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is not right because I haven't seen much development in the Sapara area or the Sapara constituency boundaries within the past 10 years. There are a lot of dilapidated buildings and overrun places and things like that
Well,
taking place. There are roads
again,
that are
Anarian,
horrible.
it speaks to the fact that there are groups of voters in this country who make decisions that have a broader impact on all of us. And how do you change that?
But I think the younger voters are the ones who want that change. So we may not see that change in this election, but we may very well see it in the next general election.
Well, we can hope so. They just updated, well, CNC3 just updated the Tuna Puna results. Roger Alexander is in the lead with
But
22,
2,100.
22, no, 2244
Uh-huh.
over Esmond Ford 1734. So far, Roger has just under 10% of the vote.
Right, yeah.
Uh, Patriotic Front has 97, NT has 37. So as of 8:46, you know what we should do? I'm going to bring up the results from the last election. Let's see.
Right,
So if you take Tuna Puna, for example, in the last election, the PNM got 9,400 votes. I'm rounding off. And the UNC got 7,500. So Roger Alexander is already a third of the way to what the UNC got last election. Esmond is
right.
far behind. He only has about 20%, 20% of what they got
10,
last
10.
time.
Yeah, 20. Just
About,
under
I'm rounding
20%.
off, yeah. Now, in Tuna Puna last election, there was a 63% voter turnout. So the
Right.
total voter turnout was 17,000 out of the
Now,
27,000 well, at that time it was 433. Only 52 people extra were added to the list.
okay, so do you think it is the personality of Roger Alexander who is swaying the votes, or is it a disgruntled constituency that is
I
changing
again
representative?
when we go into the constituencies from next week and beyond, we will get some of that data. But I think from what I was reading, the tea leaves I was reading, there is a mix of variables. There is disgruntled voters' disaffection with the incumbent. Roger Alexander does have a notoriety and a name and a following, but also I just think generally people were responding more to the UNC's campaign than the PNM's.
Right.
Because, okay, let's take the main theme of the PNM, which kept changing a bit, but Stuart Young doubled and trebled down on it in the last speech where he kept saying, new chapter, new chapter, new chapter. I don't know if people bought that Anarian because how can you be representative of new chapter if you were there for 9 years yourself? You can't just be new chapter in what? In face?
Well, a lot will argue the fact that he he wasn't in power. Why? Well, whilst he was in power, he wasn't the leader, and he couldn't make decisions. But at
Well,
the
he
same
still
time,
wasn't the
Rudolph,
leader. If you know what I mean. If I'm technical, all right. But go ahead.
no, but
Yeah.
so you and I, we work together. You are the CEO, so your power is higher than me as COO. But I can still whisper things in your ear, and you may take it into consideration or not.
True. Yes.
And 90% of the time, if I tell you you're doing something off or you're doing something wrong, you make the adjustment and we work it out together.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same way for the government. If it is an MP or a minister sees something is happening that they don't agree with, they should speak up. And we have examples of that, like Rai Ratner, who is Rai or Ravi, one out of the two,
Rai
who
Ragvir,
went
uh-huh.
and who went
Yes,
against
he
the
voted
UNC
with
vote.
the government. Yes, Rai Ragvir
Correct,
voted.
because it was in the best interest of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And you can't knock the fact of that. You can't, that shouldn't be overlooked. He went against his leadership because it was for the betterment of the country and the citizens in the country.
Yes, that is true. Well, that I believed that what he voted for was in the better interest of the country. And that is an example of the incumbent administration actually passing a law that had the potential to benefit people. The problem is that some of the laws that were passed were criticized, such as the Procurement Act. And I can tell you that the original procurement bill, to my mind, was much more robust than what was eventually passed. Secondly, they kept blaming the UNC for not supporting certain legislation. But at the same time, there are thousands of pieces of legislation already on the books that could have been enforced better. And there were other areas that they could have amended with their majority. So the population had 10 years to figure out the efficacy of the administration, and perhaps that is why there was this disaffection that we witnessed in places like Tunapuna and elsewhere. Are you seeing any updates on Tobago on your live
Tobago,
stream on
the
CNC3?
TPP is leading on both
So they still are,
on both
based on the
with both
original update
fronts.
you gave.
Yeah, but there's a close call for Tobago West, where Champa is the incumbent MP. So Tobago East, the PNM has 900, while TPP is in a landslide with 1800. I'm just rounding off. So
Okay,
almost double the amount. In Tobago West, we have 1300 for the PNM, and the TPP is at 1600.
so
So
just give me a
Tobago
minute.
West
I
is
want to
just
take in.
a 300 different, while Tobago East has a double.
So please
They've doubled
continue
the
to
amount
share
that the
with
PNM has,
viewers and listeners. I'm going to
which I
listen into
think would
TT
make
for a
a
bit.
very interesting. Sorry, I dropped off and I came back.
Okay, so
And
the
what I was
TTT,
saying, uh-huh.
okay, well, the TTT broadcast is streaming live from the UNC headquarters. Let me give you some of what he says. She's speaking to the General Secretary. Well, he's making the case that the paria has been declared.
So interestingly enough, they're doing an interview with Gary right now on CNC3 at his headquarters. And what he's saying is
Yes, what is he saying?
he can't criticize his citizens, even though persons are indicating they're disgruntled with the PNM and they don't trust the UNC. But they still go and place an X by the Balizi of the Rising Sun because that's what they believe is safe as opposed to a third party.
So similar to Michaela Pandey, it seems that he is already preempting
A defeat.
defeat.
Yeah, but
Well, she's
when the
asking the UNC what their feeling is. He says they're feeling quite buoyant. They ran a clean, strategic, and positive campaign, and they've been doing their homework. He's mentioning that they've been battling with the EBC.
But Gary actually said the one when they ask him what is the one word to describe how he's feeling, he still says hopeful.
Well, hope gets you so far. I do have an interest to see out of all these newer parties, which ones will stick to it from tomorrow and continue their work, because we've always said that that is part of the challenge. They don't win, and then they sort of fizzle, and then you see them come back again a few weeks before the next election. But that's not how you build a party.
Agreed, and I think we both said it at different places that we were at, that doing community work in the off season is the best way to build a base.
Yes.
And I still stand by that. I remember an American footballer. He was lying on a bench press machine, and they had
Mm.
just won a Super Bowl.
Uh-huh.
And what the reporter was interviewing him, and he was still exercising, and he was pushing up 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And they asked him, "You just won a Super Bowl. When are you taking a rest?" And he
Right.
paused for 2 seconds, and then he continued. He said that was his rest, that 2 seconds. And the idea that what he said in it is that to continue being a winner, you have to work in your off season.
Right. Okay. Interesting. By the way, from Tobago East, IDA 21, Patriotic Front 8, Watson Duke with PDP 120, Ayana Websteroy 923, but David Thomas, as you were saying, he's in a big lead. He's 1589.
Yeah. Well, Orput East, as we know, is a UNC stronghold, and it's showing in the results because the PNM has almost 800, was that MP, or returning MP actually,
Okay.
has nearly 8,000.
So let me look at uh, Tobago. 1 minute. Let's get Tobago's results here. Um, so Tobago East in Tobago East in 2020, 13,000 people voted. The PNM got 7, and the PDP at the time got 5,800.
Okay, couple thousand difference.
So if the number of vote now, 10,000 people did not vote in the last election in Tobago East. So again, those no voters, they hold a lot of power, because if even a small percentage of them decide to come out, they can help somebody win that seat.
I agree, and a lot of people refer to them as the third voter or the undecided voter. And I heard a very wise person once say that they are the deciding voters.
Well,
They are the ones who make the difference.
well, that person must have known what he was talking about.
If only some political parties could listen to what he or she has to say.
Well, maybe one day. But yes, they are the deciding
But
voters.
interestingly enough, I had predicted that the TPP would win Tobago. And that being said, there is going to be an uproar of that where Fali Augustin is going to be the person, maybe very well be the person that joins with either the UNC or the PNM to form the
Well,
government.
but the PNM has always said they don't believe in coalitions. So it would be very interesting to see if they break that packed. Mahalia Joseph is now at the NTA's headquarters.
Uh-huh.
Let's see what they are saying. She's saying that there is a family atmosphere. Okay, she's going to interview Gary. Okay, so she's making the point that it's their first GE. He is already saying that the country is not yet ready to make a change out of 14 other parties than the UNC and PNM. He is saying that this doesn't mean the country doesn't appreciate the candidates. He's saying it's not to question the capability, but the base support has proven that it is so strong. But Manarian, I mean, we were just talking about it. This is not a secret. We always, when we've advised other agencies or organizations, didn't we tell them that going after a shift in the base of the UNC and PNM would be futile for them? They should focus on the deciding voters, those people who don't vote. That is what we've always said. And that is what I'm not hearing from these parties.
Agreed, because we, it's known that they have a base, but the majority of persons who abstain from voting, if you can convert 50-60% of that base, you are winning that seat outright. I'm just listening into CNC3 at this
Okay.
point in time.
He's saying that he's congratulating the UNC and the PNM, but it is always a challenge to come up against them. I don't, Anarian, I don't agree with the the, the syntax. Maybe I'm being pedantic here, but he's saying that the country has decided to stick with its base support. It's not that the country has decided to stick with its base support. The base support of the two main parties has remained, and the rest of the country has decided not to vote. Isn't
Well,
that a more accurate statement?
it is, and only as the results come in, we'll be able to tell that whether it is there were more abstinences than there were persons who came out to vote. But interestingly enough, Dr. Amory Brown is on CNC3 and he's making some comments here that has me a little worried. Dr. Amory Brown is saying that
Uh-huh.
the PNM called elections a lot earlier than it was mandated. And this
Yes,
is
but we just said that.
because CNC3 is following most of the marginal seats. And he's seeing that they're losing those marginal seats.
Oh, you think that that is so? Wait, he would not have said it that way. What
He
did he
didn't he
say?
didn't say
What
that
did
way.
you read into to get that
So what he actually said
nugget?
was that the the PNM has run a very strategic campaign. They have amazing policies and positions.
He said the same thing
However,
Kanai said. Uh-huh.
however, they called an elections a lot earlier than it was mandated.
Mm-hmm.
That was his words. And that being said, I inferred that because they're losing these 6, 7 marginals that the CNC3 is consistently running on a ticker tape, it may very well be an indication to that he's foreseeing that they may lose those seats. And if they lose those seats, Rudolph, they're going to lose the elections.
Well, well, that is why I asked you to be clearer, because it's, you see, sometimes people give themselves away, especially in stressful situations, when because they will have information that you and I don't have.
Correct.
And I find it a little telling that they are being so preemptive about the results. I, I, something is has to be in the offing here in Arian, because it's so early in the night. And if you really had different information, you would be much more positive. I didn't sense any reservations from Mr. Kanhai when they interviewed the UNC. He was basically saying that they ran a campaign and they're going to see the results.
Right, yeah.
But you're saying you're hearing Amy Brown talking about the fact that so all of a sudden they knew that the election was called earlier than it needed to be called.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, that doesn't make sense. One, you called an election
Nobody forced you to
exact.
hold the election.
Yeah, but they call the election with the bare minimum by the Constitution, which was
Right.
41 days or 49 days or something like that, right? I can be wrong with the number. I can't remember the exact number. But they thought, I don't, this is just my interpretation. They thought that by calling an early election, they may have caught other parties off guard and they wouldn't have been able to do the kind of campaigning that they would have wanted to do. But
Right.
as you rightfully said, since last year, UNC has been doing some Monday night forums and crime town halls, and they have been preparing for this. My my observation is that in Parliament, because I don't know how many people actually sit down and look at the parliamentary debates and things like that. I haven't heard the UNC MPs refer to their constituency or their constituents in the majority of their debates.
Right.
And I think this is where we come in and maybe we can enlighten persons as to the difference between central government and local government. Because a lot of people in Trinidad blame central government for things, whereas it's the regional corporations that are responsible for it.
Hmm.
And I think you have a better understanding of that than I. So would you like to explain that to our viewers and listeners?
So I want you to ask the question a different way, just in case I did not get it correctly,
What
because
what is the local government responsible for versus the central government?
so local government, as the name suggests, is in place to deal with very community specific needs within that location. The central government is really responsible for national development and the collection and allocation of resources. So the local government receives revenue allocations from central government. And that is how they are able to operationalize, because local government does not generate its own revenue, etc. So at another level, both local and central government actually deal with how the country runs, because the central government makes up part of the legislation, the opposition and the administration form the parliament, and the parliament passes laws. But in the local government corporations, they have the powers to pass certain regulations that govern the spaces that they are responsible for. So it's a very, very distinct function, and people do get it mixed up sometimes.
Now, thank you for that clarification. Currently, I don't know if TTT is doing. I know they're heading to different headquarters, but at the on CNC3 stream, they are at the PNM headquarters and they're indicating there's little to no one there, as well as no MPs, no ministers greeting persons there.
Right.
The leader isn't even at the headquarters.
That is very interesting. And I always find that it's important for leaders to show up regardless. But so again, sometimes people have this approach that they want to arrive at the end as opposed to early in the evening, So that is to be expected.
Okay, fair enough.
Anything else?
I'm just listening to CNC at this point. Tobago East PNM has 1,200, while the TPP has 2,400. They've doubled the vote. In Tobago West, PNM has 1,500, while the TPP has 1,900. So the difference I'm seeing is increasing.
Okay.
And it's interesting. It really is interesting because I can't remember a time that the PNM wasn't in charge of the Tobago. They didn't win the Tobago seats. What about on your end?
Well, well, remember A&R Robinson and the NER for many years had to control those seats. And
Right.
then remember the top won them in 2010. So Tobago has proven, unlike all the other constituencies, more or less, that they are willing to move away from from a main party. They are willing to support a small party, a Tobago party. So like you, I would not be surprised if TPP takes one or both seats. And if that happens early in the evening, I think the PNM has a lot to be worried about.
I agree, but I would also like to see results coming in from some of the PNM strongholds, like the Diego Martin West
Well,
and the
let
Port
me
of
check. All
Spain.
right, let me check my viewing here. I think the media, they are focusing, of course, on the marginals, what they see as marginals. But
Yeah, but Sapari and Urupuch is not marginals.
well,
Those are UNC strongholds. Mayaro and Manzanil and Naparima are UNC strongholds as well. Or is it that the votes are coming in too slowly for them to update?
right. I'm trying to locate something here, but nothing is coming up as yet. No, nothing on those areas. You are at CNC3. I'm on TTT, and no, I'm on TTT. Let's see if TV6 has anything.
So at 9:10, Princeton has 6,000 with the UNC. Patriotic Front has 300, and the PNM has 1,800.
Okay, Kamala Prasad Bisesa said half an hour ago that we are set to win. She is looking extremely positive, and I I don't know. I guess she knows something again that we don't know.
Well, at 9:05, interestingly enough, San Fernando West, which has the current MP as Faris Alwari.
You're right.
Faris has 565 votes, while Michael Dowlat has 1,102. It's almost
Hmm.
double.
You see, we have to also remember that unfortunately, unlike the other larger countries where their news actually tracks by district, those maps they are able to show in real time,
Correct, yeah.
where you have the they can show you where the votes are coming in from. Our media houses have not been able to develop that, or at least they don't present it that way. So we don't know if Michael's votes are coming in from a traditional UNC area within that constituency.
Right. I
So
understand what you
until we
mean.
have the data later tonight, we really are still stuck in the dark as to what is going on with the voting blocks.
Right. Makes sense. So why don't we have that level of technology in Canada?
We do, they just didn't want to use it.
Ooh, okay.
Maybe next, after a local government elections, our part will be able to provide the country with something to that effect.
I look forward to that day.
As a matter of fact, not to let the cat out of the bag for our viewers, but the we do have plans for 4 exciting events coming up, and maybe an Aaron at the first event we can use the data dashboard and present it to the public there.
Right, yeah.
And if we could do it, I don't see why the media houses can't either. But again, remember, folks, to join us live tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. on Freedom 106.5 FM. We'll be looking at whatever data at, we can access and make some extrapolations, if you will, as well as we'll be interviewing representatives of various parties to get their day after reflections. But I am waiting to see this map, Anarian. It's still grayed out.
And I think the highest percentage I saw so far was Saparia with 40% of the votes counted.
That's interesting that they already counted so many.
Yeah, Tobago has reached about 25 in both constituencies. And others are just under the 15% mark.
TV6 is supposed to have an interactive map, but for some reason it's not loading. Let me try again. It's not loading at all. Let's go back to TTT.
And
Let me see what
CNC3 is
is.
currently on commercial breaks. They're paying some bills.
Okay. It's interesting, and Aaron, DK at TTT is asking the analysts about messaging again and whether or not the parties here have been able to adopt a similar approach to America, where they present policies that are mapped specifically for the regions that they want to win.
That is interesting because I don't think Trinidad is large enough to do things like that. But there are localized issues in various communities. So, for
Right.
example, certain communities receive water 24/7. So, a
Yes.
national policy on that may not affect that community or that
There you go.
constituency,
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
while others get water two, three times a week, maybe once a month, things like that. So, our policy needs to be done for that. And as you know, water is one of the utilities which falls under the Ministry of Public Utilities. That is a national or a central government issue and not a local government issue.
An update in Tunapuna 2 minutes ago. Roger Alexander is still in the lead with 38.80. However, Esmond has caught up a bit. He's at 34.29.
So that's just a difference of a couple hundred.
Yes, about 450. The PF actually is outperforming the NTA. Their candidate, Henry, has 189 and Keisha Pay of the NTA only has 68.
Well, that's interesting.
Well, Tunapuna definitely. I mean, everybody has their eyes on the marginals. I Oh, this is going to be an interesting evening. I remember, but in 2020, I think we had the results fairly early, didn't we? We had it by about 11:30.
Yeah, but we also only had 54% of the population voting. And this time I believe there are a larger
I'll
number
tell
of
you. Let me give you
voters.
the exact figure just now.
Yeah, I rounded off, but it's about 54, 56%.
In the last election, you're correct. 58% voted. 58%.
That's very interesting.
I'm in a different groups as I know you are, and people are saying things like nothing has been declared officially, but it's not looking good for the red.
Yeah.
Apparently, La Hunt is saying that PNM lost both in Tobago. You
Oh,
said that?
so
You saw anything about that?
CNT3 actually has a constituents, a map up, and Tobago is blue
Where are you seeing this map? On their channel, on their
on their
television?
channel. Yeah, I'm watching the live
Let me
stream.
see. Oh, yes. Oh. Who is San Juan? Who's running in San Juan?
Kanwan Baratara, not Saddam Hussein.
Still Saddam?
Yeah.
Okay, so TPP, well, you're hearing the same thing I am.
Yeah.
TPP, instead of declaring their confidence, Well, there the analysts on CNC3 are saying correctly that it's too early.
Exactly. It's still too early. Percentages are too low to determine outright winners. And let me ask you a question, Rodolphe. When you wake up in the morning,
Hmm.
what do you expect to see?
I expect to see the UNC having more seats in Trinidad and the TPP having at least one seat in Tobago, and therefore we'll have a new government.
Okay.
Gary Griffith is conceding,
He's conceding.
apparently. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Amory is agreeing with him, with James, that it's too early.
So you switch to CNC3.
He's saying trends have meaning. He's saying there are trends that are of some concern. Oh, La Hoqueta Talparo, I'm seeing on the ticker. UNC's ahead at 1,200 votes already, and they've reached 4,600. You saw that, Anarian? That's
Yeah.
another important one.
And I did call it somebody I was speaking to. I think it was our friend, our mutual friend Melissa. And I was telling
Oh,
her that,
Gary Griffith is coming on. Let's see what he says. He is saying that people complain they're fed up of two parties, but people are sticking to the status quo. He's not going to criticize anyone. The PNM and the UNC have done work to develop the country. He's telling his supporters don't see the PNM and the UNC members or supporters as the enemy. He said they will continue to provide the opportunity. Okay, La Hoqueta Talparo is coming back up again. PNM 47.53, UNC 67.96. Well, he's repeating the same thing he said earlier, that his candidates are quality candidates.
mm-hmm.
Let me
And
go back to TTT here. Oh, great. TTT is in Tobago. Let's say with TPP. Well, TTT is saying that they're showing a victory for Thomas. In the east, but Anarian, I still find it is so early to use the word victory. Okay, she's
Oh,
going to
sorry.
speak. She's speaking to the chairman of the TPP. Let's hear what they are excited given the short election period. They are optimistic, Anarian, about their numbers.
TPP.
Yes, in the east, particularly. Well, they're saying cautiously excited now. Hmm. Okay, they came back. Apparently, Foster really is losing. Foster is La Hoqueta, right?
Yeah. So I was saying, I was saying that to Melissa, a friend of ours who's a political scientist,
Yes.
that Philip, sorry, she just messaged me. She'll live long.
Uh-huh.
Um, that Watts is a very strong candidate for there, and he would have won it. I saw some of the videos and whatnot of persons in La Hakata as he was campaigning,
Uh-huh.
and his campaign looked like the PNM rally. Just in that constituency, the amount of people that was behind him and things like that. And apparently he's a very lovable
Okay.
person. I don't know him personally.
So one of the
Laura Lee
analysts on
phenomenal.
TTT is making the point, and you and I
Hmm.
were talking about this earlier yesterday. The danger of incumbency is that once you are in government and for long enough, every problem is yours. And even local government problems are seen as part and parcel of the failure of the incumbent government. So without the incumbent government being able to maintain the excitement of the population and to convince them that they are doing something, people naturally get fed up of you. A decade is a long time, when you really think, I mean, like it passed in a blink because two of those years we were all locked up inside our houses. But it it really has been a decade, and Arian.
Right. So just for let me listen to this update from
Sure, go ahead.
Mrs. Hammer.
So to our
Okay.
viewers out there, we have just about 19 minutes left on this live. We wanted to provide some. real-time commentary on all the commentary that's been going on. But obviously, and all of us will be up later tonight waiting for the first more final results. Uh, what you heard, an Aryan, from the update?
That the Prime Minister is going to be arriving at Bali's house in 10 minutes, and he's going to address the PNM supporters and the media at 10 p.m. sharp.
Oh, well, maybe we should stay on a little bit
We could stay on
later.
for half an hour, I believe, just to hear what he has to say.
Okay, all right.
Because
I
we've
think
heard from the leaders from all other parties, right?
yes, we even the opposition leader.
What they're saying is that they believe they have the lead in some of the seats, but
Hmm.
because the data is slow to come in, they are not releasing it as yet. But on the PNM side, that is not EBC, because as the news networks, as the media houses get them, they are releasing it.
Hmm.
San Fernando West, the update I'm seeing here is 560 for Faris and 1200 for Dewlat.
Yeah, but these things I find it is taking rather long. How it again, this is where digitalization of voting is remains an important concept because we could have had this result already. This manual count, how is it that some polling districts are moving so quickly and others are taking forever?
Maybe the number of workers there, or
No,
maybe
but
it's the
some of
fact,
the other constituencies reach 4,000 on one side and 3,000 on the other side. So didn't they start counting at the same time?
well, yeah, or maybe it's the experience of the polling staff.
I just find this is so unnecessarily frustrating. Okay, I'm going to hear an interview. I'm going to listen to this interview with Ansel Dennis. Ansel Dennis is the PNM Tobago Council leader. Let's hear what he has to say. So Sam for Cujo 222 and TPP's Samson 1968. So it's very close. David Thomas still ahead of Ayana Webster Roy. His face, Dennis, his face does not look good.
His face.
He looks dejected.
Okay. So just rounding off,
He says, it is certainly not my happiest election night, as we went in expecting to win both. So far, its signals are showing that we will not win Tobago East. Wow, that is interesting. What were you going to say? Oh, wait, 1 minute, hold your thought. What accounted for this? He said it's difficult. Voter turnout was low. A high level of voter apathy on both sides. We were clearly not able to excite enough voters. He's saying TPP were not able to excite either. Wow. Sorry, Naren, what were you going to say on your end?
La Hocketa Tal Paro, 40% of the votes counted, and I'm just
Uh-huh.
rounding up,
Yes.
with Cummings having 5,000 while Watts has 7,000.
With 40% of the votes
40% of the votes.
of
Now,
meaning 40% of the electorate, of the possible electorate.
correct, yeah. of what they checked so far. Yeah.
So last year, last election, sorry, La Hockett at Salparo had a 64% voter turnout, and the PNM got 9,000, the UNC got 7. And where you said the UNC is right now?
7,000 and counting.
Already they're at 7. But that's what
Yeah,
they got last election. And how much is the PNM?
5.
5, and the PNM got 97.
Big difference
Wow,
because did you know that
that
David
is a
Watts
shift.
was Cummings, I think his
Yes,
chairperson
yes, yes. I found that out last week, actually. And apparently he was instrumental in
in Cummings and
Cummings'
NDP.
winning.
Correct.
Yes. So that strategy of attracting people like that obviously is paying off. I mean, that is a huge for that. It's 947, and the UNC has already reached close to its last election win, but the PNM is 4,000 votes off.
Wow.
I don't see how with 40% of, because if you only have 20% left, let's say the same amount of people vote
Correct.
this
Yeah.
year, you only have 20% left of the total electorate to count. So, I mean, it's difficult to see the PNM taking up all. They would need to take up all to overcome.
Right. Right. But
Uh,
like you rightly said, we don't know whether they're coming from PNM polling districts or UNC polling
yes,
district.
yes. Ooh, that is interesting. Let's see what's going on here. Gary's is still enforcing this idea that the electorate was afraid of voting for a third party.
Right. Yeah. Urupuch East, Urupuch West, both have gone to the UNC so far.
Okay. San Fernando East is still close, 49 versus 44.
San Fernando East is Brian Manning's seat.
Yeah.
A lot of people had issues with who the UNC candidate is
Ooh,
for that area.
Tobago East has jumped 2,400 versus 1,200. That is going to be hard to pick up.
It will. And West is 19 by 22.
Puna Alexander is a thousand votes over the PNM. Arangua St. Joseph is still low count. 74 votes to 34. I don't understand how CNC3 doesn't have an updated figure yet. This gentleman, Rodney Charles, he's saying that we are moving towards a delegitimization of government, of all
Mhm.
public institutions.
Yeah, it's him I'm listening to
People
at
don't
this time.
trust. But that has can only be changed by young people.
Or by people actually being accountable and responsible and transparent.
Oh yes, they now. It's interesting, Anarian, that they're starting to talk about the EBC when, in fact, they should be talking about the results. But it seems that people are of the opinion already that there's a shift. Like it's almost a fait accompli.
Yeah, pretty much.
Let me see what my other groups are saying. Hmm. You think the TPP and the PNM will join together?
So if you watch the walk to Whitehall,
Uh-huh.
the first past the post, pretty much, UNC is ahead in 17 constituencies, while the PNM is one.
Where are you seeing this?
CNC,
Oh, let me see.
and they're declaring San Fernando East as winning.
For whom? The PNM?
Yeah, Brian Manning. That's the one seat that you're
Oh,
seeing on
okay.
that road to 21.
Oh, I think I lost my CNC3 feed. No, it's here. Okay, we have some updated numbers. Well, it's CNC3 is actually using some technology. Okay, unfortunately I got the advertisement, so I have to wait. What did you say? You said
Out of 18 seats that they're checking right now,
mm-hmm.
what TNT3 is having on their ticker tape and what they're monitoring, 17 of those has gone to the UNC,
Right.
while one went to the PNM.
So but the 17 that have been declared for the UNC are 17 of their existing seats. Or did you see any that was PNM? Any that were PNM?
Lahakata Bar is currently PNM,
Oh, that is
right?
included in the 17.
Yeah,
So the UNC has so far picked up one new seat.
so far, yeah.
And what other two
No,
seats?
San Fernando West too, because San Fernando West is Faris Alvari.
I am still skeptical about that. You think that Al Rawi will lose his seat? If
I
Al Rawi
do.
loses his seat, you have the figure. Did they give the figures?
I need to check Instagram
Because
for that because
San Fernando West, the PNM got 8,400 last election, and the UNC got 6,700.
that's how I'm loading
So
Instagram.
it's less than 2,000, eh?
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I kept saying to these parties. You just need to focus on converting what I call the deciding voter. Because if you can get from that no vote population 10 to 20%, you win to add
All
to
right.
your
So
base.
at 9:52 update, Baratara Sawa
Hmm.
has Saddam Hussein in a landslide so far. So we
What you
have
have?
the
How much
PNM
now?
with 33, PNM with 3,300 and
Yeah.
Saddam with 7,100.
Okay, so last election, he got 8,300. So he's close already to his target. and PNM got 7,200. And they
Right.
at what? 3,000?
Yeah.
So
3,300.
so they're about halfway there. But again, I have to wonder where these polling districts are. But if the UNC is already closed at this hour at 10 o'clock, unless there's 10,000 more votes to count on Arian, I don't know where the
Well, yeah. So I wouldn't see that until they bring it up on the stream itself, what percentage they have reached.
okay.
Tunapuna area, the
Mm-hmm.
UNC has 6,100,
Uh-huh.
while the PNM, I'm rounding up here, has 52.
So last election, Tunapuna UNC got 75 and PNM got 95.
Right, so they're both very far. Well, UNC is closer,
UNC is
but
closer.
the PNM is very far from where they are. Kearney,
Uh-huh.
Kearney has the UNC with 6,200,
Which
and
Karen?
the Central
Uh-huh.
6,200, while
Mm-hmm.
the PNM has 1,000.
Well, last election, Kearney Central got 11,000 UNC and 6,900 for PNM. So chances are they're carrying that again anyway.
Right, Orapuch West, UNC has 1,500, the PNM has 700.
Okay, it's nearly 10 o'clock. Which station was going to take this live?
So Akash is saying they're still standing by to go across for 10 o'clock to the Balizy
Okay.
house. Saddam wants to declare his seat in Barata.
Did the UNC, so far is Maruga holding for UNC?
I haven't seen any results of Maruga yet, but I believe the PNM candidate, Maruga, may win that seat. That's my just personal belief.
I find though I don't know, maybe I'm just being cautious, but it's only 10 o'clock and people are speaking, these analysts are all speaking as though the PNM has lost. Maybe in their gut, they know that the PNM has lost because they are accustomed to reading the tea leaves. What do you think?
I think that they're hopeful. That's the word I would use in this instance because it's too early though to call any of the results. We're looking at 18 seats thus far, according to CNC3 and the road to Whitehall. So 18 seats alone isn't enough to make the government. But if the UNC takes a lead to, let's say, about 25, I would safely say then that the UNC has won. If they take landslide leads.
Well, according to the analysts on TTT, it's quite possible that they will hold the 19 that they had from before
Mm-hmm.
and they will take Tunapuna, La Hoketa, and St. Joseph. So 19 plus 3 is 22. They win. They don't even need Tobago.
Correct, yeah.
Now, if they lose one or two in Trinidad, then this accommodation concept with Tobago will come into play. But I do not see Farley and they playing ball with the PNM because the UNC is more likely to give them what they want.
Correct. I honestly don't see Farley them wanting to join with anyone.
1 minute, this analyst is asking about the internal polls that caused the current prime minister to call the election. Hmm. Well, that is interesting. That will be a topic of conversation from tomorrow about Stuart Young's continued leadership of the party. Because when you take your party into defeat, you're supposed by Westminster to resign. Now, Kamala Prasad Visesa has never offered her resignation, as far as I'm told. But I mean, the members always come back and reinforce that they want her there. So you can't hold it against her either.
Right, agreed.
Let me
And
just listen to this voice note here.
sure,
Anil Roberts apparently was on something saying that Talparo has been declared.
declared. I think it's still too early.
What is the count? What is I am getting frustrated with the media. I find that the media, Anarian, is not able to present these numbers quickly. Why don't they have a camera on the the headquarter boards? Can you check and like where's WESN in all of this?
WSN has the analyst and I'm talking for that. So WSN is going live to Balize House right now.
Okay, okay,
Because
let's
I
see.
have multiple streams up that I'm switching back and forth between.
I'm not seeing I'm not seeing a live on their Facebook. Where you getting it? What of their website?
WSN Beyond the Colors, Your Voice, Your Vote, Your Future on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
So no one has arrived at Balize House as yet. It's 10:05. So
Oh
they're
wait,
going
that's
back to studio. So there's a debate going on WSN
I
right
know
now.
well tell the viewers, you tell the viewers, but
So they're debating as to who is going to address the nation from Balize House, whether it's the sitting prime minister or the leader of the PNM, who apparently is two different persons.
Hmm, I like this conversation.
So Claxon Bay has been added, PNM with 46 and UNC with 92.
Apparently,
Faizabad update, PNM on 32, UNC on 88. La Hakata hasn't changed, still 47, 67.
Anaran, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm going to move away from this conversation for a minute because they have gone way past
Switch to
the
CNC
result.
pretty quickly. Here's the updates.
Yes, I'm there. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Claxton Bay. Wait, the guy from Pedro Front got 0 votes?
From where?
Claxton Bay, the young boy, he gets 0 votes so far out of
Okay.
13,000. Wow. Anarian, d- this is this is very interesting.
In regards to what? You're watching the same thing
Yeah,
I'm
well, it's
watching?
exactly what Akash has just said. She doesn't normally leave that early, and it's true. Barataria, seven. But there has been a complete suppression of some of the PNM votes. Anarian, the PNM has lost a lot of its support.
Yeah.
Well, the woman proved everybody wrong. They said they should get rid of her, and she come back and beat everybody. Well, I and all will have to eat my own words.
I think they're coming to your area, Taruka.
Who?
On the stream, the next one is supposed to go to.
Oh, oh God. Dr. Brown is saying that in order for them to win, they would have had to make extreme commitments. But that is what we were asking the administration to do for 10 years, to make some innovative, hardline, moonshot promises. And what have we got? Unfortunately, and this is perhaps why we are seeing what we are seeing.
Right. Apparently, I was behind a couple of minutes on CNC, so I now pull back up to live.
Okay.
Did you just say that Kamala left
She left Siparia to go to headquarters.
she went to motion picture and yeah.
She's on her way there. And it's the earliest she's ever done that, as far as they said so, and I agree. I know from my experience in the past. Oh gosh, we're going to hear. Look at Rohan face. Keith Rowley talking. Okay, Naren, let's hear. Look at Stuart Young face. I want a picture of this. He said it's not a good night for the PNM. He said it. He said it, and Arian. We have lost the election. Wow. And Arian, you think what do you think will be Stuart Young's future with all of this?
Well, now
You think they will
they
keep him
can.
as the prime minister? Well, so no,
No,
he can't be the prime minister. What stupid is that talking? You think they will vote him in as the political leader?
well, that is a difficult thing to determine because he may have Dr. Rowley's endorsement, but I think the PNM is disgruntled with Dr. Rowley for him leaving before the end of his term.
I don't. I agree, and I think that they will tie Stuart to him, and they
Correct.
will choose somebody else.
I do hope it's a younger face they choose.
I believe they will choose Foster Cummings.
Yeah, I had
No, but
same
they can't.
sentiment.
They won't be able to if Foster loses. He's not an MP. Oh my word.
Oh,
Ooh.
there may be only 10 or 11 persons they can choose from.
Ah. Maybe Penny will get it after all. Because Penny will win. You saw anything about Arima at all?
No, I didn't.
Tobago has gone both blue. I'm
Yeah,
seeing a map. Both blue.
yeah,
It converted.
yeah, it was, always was. TPP is leading in Tobago on both seats. So come tomorrow, Dr. Rowley is resigning as a political leader to have a call for national convention.
Well, perhaps if they had done that months ago, they wouldn't be in this position today.
I want to hear what Dr. Amy Brown is going to say when it is they do go back to the panel.
The population decided that the UNC old chapter was better than new chapter and RN. I can't help but lie. I laugh. I just, oh my word.
He also said the population has chosen the party of packages, of promises, or the package of
Yeah, but they
promises.
also promise things. So that is
Correct.
an unfair statement. Anyway, it's politics.
Okay, on Wednesday they'll determine who the
Yes.
opposition leader is.
Wow, Anarian, the data never lies. Didn't we say this? We were not publishing our findings because of our need to remain independent. But our data showed us, didn't it, that the
It did.
UNC was going to win this election. Well, Anarian, I think that this proves that the data must be followed, that it is always possible to change the outcome if you do the work that is necessary. And again, the newer parties did not do their work, but apparently the UNC did.
I I agree with that. I do feel a little bit sorry for the smaller parties.
Hmm. Well, Nicholas Morris did very well. He got 10,000 votes in Mayaro.
Okay, nice.
He's saying they expect 10 to 13 seats. I don't understand the math. So how much is being declared for UNC? 27?
Yeah, minus the two from
So
Tobago.
25 and 2?
Yeah,
What? The new chapter is the UNC. The electorate turned its back on the self-proclaimed OGT who tried to sell himself as new when in fact he was there for a decade. The population of 2025 is not the same as 1962. So Anarian, it's 10:28. I think it's fine if we wrap now because the PNM has conceded. We have some
yeah,
homework to do for the rest of the evening to get prepared for our live radio broadcast tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock.
that's gonna be very interesting.
Yes, so I'm going to thank all of those who tuned in, and of course, this will remain up. But again, our intuition and our analysis proved us right. We didn't get every single seat, but we did say that one at least in Tobago would turn, and we did say that the UNC would pick up at least two more seats in Trinidad, and they have picked up more than two. So the data is what it is, and the writing was on the wall.
The data never lies.
Well, people try to make it lie, but yeah.
I do hope that the smaller parties continue to fight and continue to do things in communities
Well,
so
let's
that
see.
they may um they may very well be a force to be reckoned with if the UNC and the coalition of interest doesn't perform as well as they have promised.
Yeah.
But I am hopeful that they will perform well. I do
Well,
hope that the
my
PNM holds them
well,
accountable in
yes.
Parliament for
Well,
the
we
steps
know
that they
our
do.
part is going to do our part. But
Correct.
we again agree with you. Citizens, come forward, put your hand up. The UNC said they want everybody to come and help because we have a lot of problems in the society. So let's all get on board and help the country now that the population has spoken. There's no question anymore. We have to get behind the government, whichever government won. We have to hold them accountable, but we have to help them at the same time.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
So with that, I bid everyone good evening, good night, be safe, and here's to the next 5 years. We have something different. We have a party coming in and are in with us with a special majority.
Yes, yes, we do.
Let's see
And
what they do with it.
I do have a prediction that this change in government will affect the local government level at the next LGE.
Of course. Well, by
Because
that
right
time,
now,
we know there will be new parties and new options. So,
yes, right now we're at 7-7. I believe it may change come 2027. Okay, Rudolph,
all right.
we called
Thank
it.
you.
We did say by 10:30 we would have an
Yes,
answer.
and we did. So, I'll see you offline shortly. Good night,
All
everyone.
right,
Thank you for
take
joining
care,
our
Rudolph.
part.